I'm divorcing you, so get out.
Right after I returned home with my twins from my parents' house after giving birth, I saw my husband in bed with a woman I didn't know. What on earth is going on here? I demanded. Without any remorse, he mocked me along with the woman. Then, he demanded a divorce. Are you really sure about this? At that moment, he was unaware of a significant fact. Later, he would deeply regret what he had done. Please watch along with me as he realizes his mistake. I met my husband, Albert, who is 3 years older than me, during our college years. I was studying design at an art school, while Albert was attending a prestigious university. We met at a party organized by a friend, and after that, he passionately pursued me. At first, I wasn't very interested in Albert and felt confused, but gradually, I was drawn to his confident personality and his earnest efforts to win me over. We started dating and got married when I was 27. When we first got married, my husband worked at a major securities firm, and I was employed as a web designer at a design office. Albert, who graduated from a prestigious university and landed a job at a large company, was on the elite track and had a high income. In contrast, my workplace was a small, modest office, and my salary was less than half of his.
Mary, even though we work the same hours, I earn twice as much as you.
I can't compete with your income. I'm doing my best, though.
Oh, come on, design is just like playing around. Since I'm supporting you, you should handle all the housework.
He often belittled my job like that. He did nothing around the house, and his attitude towards me gradually worsened. After enduring such days for a while, I gained enough experience as a designer and decided to become independent from the company that had taken care of me for so long. I then established my own design office, which had been my long-term goal. When I reported this to my husband, he didn't seem very interested, but soon after, he took a surprising action. Out of the blue, Albert announced that he was going to start his own business and quickly resigned from his company. Needless to say, I was bewildered since he hadn't discussed it with me beforehand. You never mentioned you had such a dream. What kind of company are you planning to start?
Seeing you go independent inspired me. I'm thinking of using my knowledge from my previous job to run online investment seminars.
Is that so? Have you studied how to start a business?
I'll watch some videos on YouTube and learn as I go. Since you have experience, you can help with accounting, right?
Seeing his attitude, I started to feel increasingly anxious. I had always dreamed of becoming independent and had been gradually preparing by gaining specialized knowledge and building connections while working at my previous design office. Compared to that, Albert seemed to be acting without much thought. In fact, after I resigned to start my own business, I found out I was pregnant with twins. But since there was no turning back, I went ahead and established my office. I was very anxious, and of course, he knew how I felt. Why now? I was exasperated by his impulsive decision to start a business and couldn't help but let out a big sigh. However, since I was working in a field I loved, design, I wanted to support him if he was determined to give it his best shot. So, I decided to help Albert with accounting and paperwork during my breaks from work. After quitting his job, my husband spent more time at home, but he still didn't help with the housework or show any concern for my health during my pregnancy. As for me, I was overwhelmed with house chores, my own office work, and supporting my husband. This hectic schedule caused me to experience more frequent abdominal pain and health issues. Can I safely give birth in this condition? I'm also worried about raising the twins afterward. My anxiety kept growing. I started to think that maybe I should return to my distant hometown to give birth. My mother passed away when I was very young, and my father, who raised me single-handedly, now lives alone. Although he is older and has some mobility issues, he readily agreed when I discussed my concerns with him. That night, I nervously told my husband about my decision. I think I want to have the baby back home.
You're going to your parents' house to give birth? So, you'll be away for 2 or 3 months?
Yes. Having twins right after birth will be tough, so I thought I'd get help from my dad. Is that okay?
Sure, that's fine. Take it easy for a while. Don't worry about me.
His response was surprisingly nonchalant, which left me a bit taken aback. I was sure he'd be upset about having to handle his own meals and laundry while I'm gone. I was glad the issue of returning home was resolved, but I was slightly bothered by how easily he agreed to it. Albert must be worried about me too, even if he doesn't say it. I need to do my best to have healthy babies. I decided to appreciate his consideration and accept it gratefully.
Take care and have a safe trip.
On the day of my departure, he cheerfully saw me off. When I arrived at my parents' house by taxi, my father welcomed me warmly. My father, who has always been capable of handling household chores, took care of everything to ensure I could rest. A few weeks after returning to my parents' house, thanks to my father's help, I safely gave birth to healthy twins as planned. Honestly, I was exhausted, but I was so happy that I immediately sent a message to my husband with pictures of the babies. However, no matter how long I waited, there was no reply. The next day, I finally received an email from him that just said, "Good job." That's it. Albert's reaction was not what I had hoped for, and I felt disappointed. However, my father was thrilled with the birth of his first grandchildren, and my local friends came to visit, so I was able to spend some happy times. A month after giving birth, the day finally came for me to return home to my husband. I had informed Albert of the date a week in advance via email, but there was no response at all. Is he busy with work? I felt a bit anxious about returning home, but I encouraged myself, thinking that I couldn't afford to be weak now that I was a mother of twins. My father, looking worried, asked,
"Should I accompany you home?"
But I didn't want to trouble him any further, so I declined and got into the taxi. I arrived safely at our apartment. I was excited to see my husband again and to introduce him to our children. With a sense of anticipation, I unlocked the front door. However, the house was dark, and it seemed like no one was home. Is he out somewhere? As I thought that, I noticed a pair of women's shoes that weren't mine at the entrance. At that moment, I had a very bad feeling. I put the babies in the crib I had prepared in the living room and quietly headed towards the bedroom. The only room with the door closed is this one. With trembling hands, I grabbed the doorknob and, summoning my courage, opened the door. There, I found Albert and a young woman I didn't know. They seemed to have been sleeping, but the sound of the door opening startled them. What on earth is going on here? I demanded, confronting my husband. He sighed wearily.
Oh, you were coming back today?
While I was giving birth to our children. Who is this woman? Get out.
You're the one who needs to leave. I'm going to live with her from now on.
What? What are you talking about? Unlike me, who was raising my voice in this outrageous situation, Albert remained unrepentant and nonchalant.
Her name is Lily, and she's still a student. She's sweet and cute, and you know, women have to be young.
My husband proudly praised his mistress while Lily stood next to him, looking at me with a smug smile. I couldn't believe he could say such things in this situation, clearly mocking me.
I'm divorcing you. Take the kids and get out of the house.
Oh, really? Are you sure about this?
Of course.
Albert spat out these words, then took something from the drawer by the bedside and tossed it to me. It was a completed divorce application. I silently picked it up, turned my back on my husband and his mistress, and left the house with my twins and my belongings from my stay at my parents' house. So, Albert welcomed my stay at my parents' house and never visited because he was having an affair. Everything made sense now. I had thought he was being considerate of me, but it was all for him to enjoy his time with her. Just when I thought we could start fresh as a family after my stay at my parents' house, I discovered my husband's infidelity. Of course, I was shocked, but as a mother with a newfound determination to protect my children, I didn't shed any tears. I will never forgive Albert and that woman. I vowed to take revenge on the two of them and headed to a certain place. About a week after leaving the house, I received a call on my phone from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, but it kept ringing repeatedly, so I finally checked it. It was my husband. Apparently, he had borrowed Lily's phone.
What did you do?
As soon as I pressed the call button, Albert's voice came through, raised in anger. What's wrong? I thought you didn't need me anymore.
Suddenly, my credit card and phone stopped working. I got an envelope from the real estate company telling me to vacate the apartment, and I don't understand what's going on.
So, what about it?
And then there's a certified letter from a lawyer. Just come back home right now.
Albert seemed to be in a panic, and after saying that, he abruptly hung up the phone. I decided to head to the apartment as he had asked. When I rang the doorbell, the door immediately opened, and I was pulled inside by my arm. There stood Albert, his face twisted with anger, and Lily, standing with her arms crossed, looking displeased.
This is your doing, isn't it?
What?
You were jealous of us and retaliated out of spite.
I couldn't believe what he was saying, and I sighed, pressing my fingers to my temples. Wait a minute, you're making it sound like I still have feelings for you. I've already submitted the divorce papers to the court. You two can get married or do whatever you want.
Then stop interfering with us. I'll sue you.
I just did what was necessary. Since we're divorced, it's not right for me to pay for your living expenses, is it?
What?
Both Albert and Lily looked puzzled, unable to understand what I was saying. The truth is, after quitting his previous job to start his own business, Albert's monthly income was only about $700. He was satisfied with just starting the company and had left all the troublesome tasks like accounting to me, so he didn't know this. I was the one who had been covering the living expenses in his place. Although I had a low income before, during that time, I thoroughly prepared by gaining experience and building connections, which allowed me to successfully establish my design office. By this point, I was earning more than 3 times what Albert used to make at his corporate job. Therefore, even after his income drastically changed, we were able to maintain our standard of living without any issues. After deciding to take action against them, I went to a real estate agency. I had been paying the rent for our apartment, but I changed the payment account to his. With his salary, there was no way he could cover the rent. When I told Albert this, he started to panic. Well, of course. He had always been proud of working for a well-known company and earning a high salary, so he couldn't believe he was now making only $700 a month.
Why didn't you tell me?
I knew you had a lot of pride, and I believed that marriage was about supporting each other. So, I didn't think it was necessary to tell you.
Ugh.
Besides, shouldn't you at least know your own income? Albert, who had continued to treat me poorly with the mindset of his high-income days, now realized that it was my income that had been sustaining our lifestyle. He looked down, unable to bear the shame. However, the one who couldn't accept this was Lily.
You said you were a CEO and lived in this fancy apartment. So I dated you, but you're just a poor old man. I can't believe it. I'm breaking up with Albert, and I'm done with this.
She suddenly screamed and stormed out, trying to push past us. That's not true. You're still a student, so I've sent a certified letter to your parents. When I said this to her back, she stopped in her tracks and turned around. Her face, which had been full of confidence, turned pale. She quickly checked her phone and saw numerous missed calls, presumably from her parents. Lily started trembling and collapsed on the spot. As I turned to leave, feeling that my business here was done, Albert, who had been looking down, desperately clung to me.
It was just a fling. I'll do my best with the housework and childcare from now on. Since your job is demanding, I'll become a stay-at-home dad and support you.
I refuse. I've hired a babysitter and returned to work, so nothing will stop even without you. When I said that and pushed him away, Albert slumped his shoulders and stood there in shock. I left the two of them behind and returned home to my children. After that, Albert cashed out all the money he had invested and paid me $30,000 in compensation for his infidelity. It turned out that he had spent over $50,000 on expensive gifts for Lily. Since he had used our joint account, I planned to get that money back as well. With his business only bringing in $700 a month, it was impossible for him to pay $600 a month in child support for the twins and still manage to live, so he ended up in debt. Now, he is working multiple part-time jobs while looking for a new job. As for Lily, her parents contacted me to apologize and paid the compensation on her behalf. After being thoroughly scolded by her parents, Lily was taken back to the countryside after graduating from college. Meanwhile, my design office has been growing steadily and has finally become incorporated. The scale of the projects we handle has increased, and we have more employees, resulting in a more stable income than ever before. My future goal is to establish the headquarters in my hometown and live there with my children and father. To achieve this, I will continue to give my all to both my work and raising my children.
How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.